On a fine midsummer day in 1998, a collection of particularly graceful yachts assembled for a regatta in the channel off Largs Yacht Haven. They were yachts which had been designed by a family of internationally renowned boat builders in a boatyard at Fairlie, a quiet village 3 miles south of Largs. These boat builders, the Fifes, started building boats in about 1800 and carried on until the start of the last World War, and their yachts still have a worldwide reputation for excellence. A local historian, John Miller, walking on the foreshore at Fairlie with Bill Fife, a descendant who lives in the village, takes up the story of the Fifes of Fairlie.
You know, Bill, when your ancestor John Fife, the son of a farmer, came to Fairlie in 1770 to set himself up as a millwright and carpenter, Fairlie was an isolated seaside village of less than 150 people. His first son, John, is recorded as having built fishing boats at about the beginning of the 19th century. Now, that would be quite a good trade for a fishing village. Now, his second son, William, born in 1785, served his time as a carpenter and millwright with his father at a very early age. At this time, many merchant ships anchored in the relatively sheltered waters between Fairlie and the Cumbria while they were waiting for a berth up the Clyde. At the age of 15, William Fife built himself a dinghy so that he could see these ships closer to, but it was bought off him by a friend before he could use it. The second one he built was also snapped up, and he realised that there might be a trade in this boat building. So for 1 shilling per annum, he rented space on the foreshore, which was part of the Kelburn estate belonging to the Earl of Glasgow. And he started up in business, soon outshining his brother John. In 1813 he married Janet Jimison. In 1814, this remarkable self-taught man designed and built a 70-ton paddle steamer using best Kilbirnie oak. She was named Industry. The single-cylinder engine built by George Dovey of Glasgow drove 2 10.5-foot paddle wheels and was said to sound like a coffee mill. This is still preserved in Glasgow's Transport Museum. This steamer, along with racing yachts and fishing boats, were all built by Fife's small team of carpenters, with tools often handmade to suit the job. They worked on the exposed foreshore in all weathers and launched the boats at high tide. Quite a feat with a boat the size of Industry. In 1821, after 3 daughters, Janet presented him with a son. William Fife II must have been a quick learner, because at the age of 19 his father made him manager of the yacht building side of the yard. In 1854 William married Mary, a governess from Northumberland. They still lived in Croft End House, which at the time overlooked the yard and the foreshore, on which there was still only a blacksmith shed and 2 others. The house was next door to Bogue's Inn, which is now the Village Inn, and was a convenient hostelry for Fife's clients when inspecting their boats under construction. In 1856, the family business was registered as a company, William Fife and Son. The next year, a son was born to William and Mary, and he was also named William III. In 1865, an 80-ton cutter named Fiona was designed by William II and built at Fairlie. Skippered by John Houston of Largs, she became the top scoring boat in her class for 8 seasons. For this, she was nicknamed either the Fawn of Fairlie or the Terrible Fiona, depending on whether one crewed for or against her. In the early 1870s, the Marquis of Ailsa inherited Culzean Castle and he started a boat building yard on the foreshore. In early 1881, he invited William III to manage the yard, which had moved by then to Maidens, a little further south. In 1884, he designed a small 2-ton racing yacht, Vagrant, built at Maidens for Mr. Thomas Trock. She was rather over-canvassed, but was raced very successfully in Dublin Bay. 95 years later, she was discovered laid up in a boatyard and was restored by Jack Tyrrell at Arklow. In 1984, she was sailed across from Ireland to Maidens to celebrate her 100th birthday. Vagrant is now lovingly preserved in the Scottish Maritime Museum at Irvine. In the next year, 16 boats were designed by Fife, including a steam launch and a 20-rater for Mr. F.C. Hill to new rules. Mr. Hill named her Dragon, and he came back twice to order her successors, all called Dragon, and each one better than the last. It was from then on that Fife adopted the distinctive Dragon Cove hallmark for his boats. A gilded dragon head is carved on the bows with a thin gold line extending to the stern, where it finishes with a wheat-sheaf tail. This golden dragon, together with the graceful lines of the yachts, is today recognised immediately around the world as the mark of a Fife boat.
In the small port of Hamble on the Solent, there's a busy boatyard called Fairlie Restorations, which specialises in restoring Fife yachts. When we visited there in the spring of 1999, there were several boats in the shed, including the Lady Anne and Hispania. We spoke to Fife expert Dr. William Collier about the origins and objectives of the yard.
Fairlie Restorations was established in 1989 by a Swiss yachtsman called Albert Obrist, who had bought and restored the Fife schooner Altair in the mid-80s, and he was so pleased with the result of that restoration and the sheer beauty of the boat that he had an idea that it would be great to reuse the team that had really perfected its skills during the Altair restoration and try and restore as many other Fifes as was possible. As a basis for doing that, he bought a yacht called Twiga, which was lying in very poor condition in Cyprus, and brought her back here, and Fairlie Restorations was set up around that yacht. I hope that our craftsmanship measures up well with the original craftsmanship in Fairlie. Obviously there are some things that we are not able to do in the same way as the original builders would have done them, and that's largely to do with changed supply of woods. We can't get all the same timbers as they were able to use at the time. Equally, there are some things which they did which built in flaws into the boat, such as their use of yellow metals and steel, setting up electrolytic degradation in the original construction, and now using modern materials such as nylon to isolate these things and try and prevent them. The great improvement is really in paints and in bedding compounds and things like that, things that will help to give the restored boats a longer life than the original boat.
The Lady Anne was built in Fairlie in 1912 and was relaunched from here in the summer of 1999, fully restored to its original beauty. In the closely conditioned storeroom in the boatyard, Dr. Collier keeps thousands of original and early drawings of Fife yachts. This file contains details of the Lady Anne, which were used to guide the restoration in progress. This is one of Fife's original notebooks, with longhand calculations and a sketch to match. This is the yacht Bedouin, launched in 1884. It can be seen to be one of Fife III's own drawings, since he always shows his yachts sailing right to left, contrary to the normal convention. This drawing illustrates the meticulous detail of Fife's designs, which were specified without the help of computers. At 106 foot on the waterline, she was Fife III's first drawing for a big racing cutter. Back out in the shed, we asked Dr. Collier about the Hispania.
This is the former Spanish royal yacht built in 1909 for Alfonso XIII of Spain. She was built in Spain but to Fife's designs, but during the interwar period she was owned in England, but by 1938 she was considered to be structurally unsound for racing and was used as a houseboat for 30 years until we went to rescue her in the summer of 1997 and brought her down here. She was on West Mersey, on Mersey Island, and in a mud berth. We floated her out of there and then put her on a barge and towed the barge down to here. She's broken her back up there, you can see, and she's lost about 3.5 feet of shear. The boat is built on steel frames with mahogany planking, and between the steel frames are steamed wood frames. In the current condition, the steel work, which was the original backbone of the boat, has virtually rotted away, leaving only the steamed wooden frames to hold the mahogany planks together. During the restoration, we'll obviously need to renew all the steel. We will use bronze bolts again. We will need to replace a lot of those, but also what we'll do is use modern bedding compounds and isolating techniques so we don't build in all the same problems again.
It was in 1898 that Thomas Lipton, a self-made millionaire, issued his first challenge to the America's Cup. Having been unable to find a suitably experienced designer in Ireland, he commissioned William Fife to design a challenger, Shamrock. The odds were stacked against her. She had only 2 trial races before sailing to America. She had a mainly amateur crew, and William had to leave the pre-race trials and return to Scotland due to illness. The American defender Columbia easily won all 3 races. William Fife II died in 1902, not knowing that his son William was to design the newly knighted Sir Thomas Lipton's 3rd challenger. Shamrock 3 was built the next year at Denny's shipyard in Dumbarton. Here she is seen leaving the Clyde, rigged for the transatlantic voyage. Sadly, she was again beaten for the Old Mug by the New York club's defender, Reliance. William Fife always insisted on the use of the best material throughout his boats. Only knot-free, straight-grained oak or pine for external use, and mahogany, walnut or the like for internal finish. In pure racing yachts, internal finish was always top class, even though Spartan. But in cruisers, many luxuries were often requested by their millionaire owners, including silks and tapestries. Some even had aga cookers and grand pianos. By this time, William II's idea of using makeshift pontoons to help launch the larger yachts had been replaced by a custom-made floating dock. The yacht was moved into the dock at low water and floated out at high tide. The dock was then allowed to fill with water and sink, to be recovered at low tide. This worked well for yachts with up to 14 feet draft. The last boat to be launched from the yard before the war was Some Run, a 90-ton yawl for Lord Sackville. After a refit in Italy in 1983, she now has Bermudan rig, and although built for cruising, she is also a very fast boat. After the war, in recognition of his services to the war effort, William Fife was awarded an OBE. Post-war recovery in Scotland was slow, even more so than in England, and only 3 relatively large yachts were launched from the Fairlie yard in the 8 years before the general strike in 1926. Kentra, launched in 1922, was a 90-ton cruising yacht, 60 foot on the waterline and 100 foot overall. Kentra was one of the stars at the Fife Regatta in 1998. The 15-metre ocean racer Halloween, built in 1925, was a cracker. Colonel Baxendale entered her in the Fastnet race of 1926, and she finished in record time, which was not beaten until 1939. Up until 1970, she continued to beat many younger boats in American ocean races before being chartered out for some years. Since then, she has been restored and re-rigged to Fyffe's original design. In the summer of 1929, the keel of a 160-ton schooner was laid down in the Fairlie yard. This was the last large yacht to be built at Fairlie. Altair was ordered by Captain Guy McCaw, who planned to cruise extensively in the South Pacific. She was 77 foot at the waterline and 109 foot overall. At the age of 72, William Fyffe could still design a beautiful boat, and his team of craftsmen ensured perfection throughout the finished product. Altair returned to Fairlie for her 60th birthday in 1991. In 1935, an old client asked for a 50-ton gaff-rigged schooner built to the new ocean racing rules. He intended to sail through the Magellan Straits and back round the Horn, but Fyffe persuaded him to accept a design for a 70-foot Bermudan rig cutter built at these rules at a cost of £7,250. Fyffe's design for Latifa was the first in that class and initiated a new generation of ocean racers. At the age of nearly 80, his design still produced the comment from the press that it did not matter what the yard builds, it is inevitably beautiful. William died on the 11th of August 1944, and his sisters chose a gilded scale model of Latifa to top the spire of Fairlie Parish Church as a weather vane in his memory.
I think the reason that people have looked to Fyffe so much now is that his boats combine an aesthetic beauty, incredible sailing qualities, and a very high original construction quality. And it's that combination of original construction, beauty and speed, or seaworthiness, which makes them so attractive.
For 150 years, the Fyffes were the acknowledged leaders in the building of quality yachts, both for racing and cruising. But the only reminders in Fairlie today of the Fyffe dynasty are the weather vane on the top of the church and the remains of this jetty. However, as long as the Fyffe yachts continue to be lovingly restored and sailed in all corners of the globe, the dragons of Fairlie will not be forgotten.